Hello everyone. It has been a week, and by tomorrow will probably be 2 weeks, but alright, I know. Where have I been for the last few weeks? Okay, or at least a week. Well, I don't know if I mentioned this, probably did. I'm gonna say I did. I've been under school, got piled up, life happened, and, well, I got a little behind on some stuff, so. Yeah, lots happened, and, ooh. Okay. I'm gonna have to unpack this in 2 episodes. I don't know why this is there. In 2 episodes. So today, I'm gonna talk about last week. As much as I can without exhausting myself. 2, I'm going to mention this week tomorrow. Check on your calendars tomorrow, most likely in the night, because that's apparently where I'm going with, and I think I'm gonna stick with it. If I have time for maybe an afternoon stream, who knows? But it's anybody's game. Okay. Right. So, last week, on Saturday, I went to Oak Glen with my family because my mother's birthday was last week. Hydrate. Lovely thing called water. Okay. Okay. But, alright. So, my mom wanted to go to Oak Glen. I thought I could get some things done and I could go because I wanted to get out of the city for a while. Wanted to, get some fresh air, get, like, the mountains. It was farther away from home. It was a good time to just get away. I needed to get away. I think we all can understand that. We all need to get away from this, okay? Yeah, just get away from it all. Anyway. Turned out to be a disaster. Drama happened between my parents. I'm not getting into it. I'm not... Honestly, it's there, it's done. It was a terrible idea. Terrible idea to go with my parents, anyway. Nothing against them, it's just, you mix drama and fun. It's like, you don't want that. No. You don't want drama with your fun. It's like, you want sardines with your ice cream. They don't mix. And taste disgusting. Not that I've tried it myself, but I'm thinking this fish and ice cream. Yeah, no. I'll be surprised if somebody's done that. I will. Because those are just things you don't really think about. Anyway, getting off track. So yeah. Lots of drama happened. It wasn't a pretty sight. And honestly, I was trying to make the best of it, but it was just the worst trip. The most good thing about it was just the drive. That was it. That was pathetic. So yeah, turned out I should have stayed at home, but I got a little bit of something called cabin fever. Yeah, throughout the entire week, I was mostly at home. Which segues into this week. Alright, so Monday's classes, I usually have virtual. Wednesday's classes are usually mixed between online and in person. And Friday's classes are usually the same. Yeah. Honestly, it gets hectic sometimes. Alright, let's start with Monday. Okay. This is around the time I was still in the midst of planning for my lesson. Okay? I will get to that when we head to Thursday. But, a little bit backstory. I don't know if you remember from last episode or maybe the episode before, but, little recap, I decided to sign up for a tutoring session, which turned out to be, well, you're the teacher, you plan stuff, and it's not your regular tutoring thing. I'm like, oh crap. I gotta plan, I gotta do stuff, I'm nervous. Yeah, there's just a lot of things going in your brain. Such as you're thinking about what you want to do, how you want to do it, and make sure that it's appropriate and comfortable on both sides. And by both sides, I mean for the students and for you. But a little bit of something. I never taught virtual before. I've taught in person, but I have it's been a while, and the pandemic kind of made me rusty. I was all kinds of a mess. So Monday was just nerves piling up. And I was just a million miles a minute thinking of different other things, and that's what happens when you're nervous. You're just thinking so many things, and then you're just trying to tell yourself, chill. Just chill. Yeah. So again, chill. Okay. Maybe I should chill with the voice. So I was talking to my class and everything, and they were saying that I think the teacher said children love to be heard by adults. I know that sounds weird, but children want to be heard by teachers. There's a reason. If you stop me if this sounds familiar to you. There's a child that's at home, but the child has so many good thoughts to say. But the parent, being exhausted from work or having a lot going on, doesn't really pay attention to the child. So where else is the child supposed to convey their thoughts and feelings? That is the major problem. Sometimes a parent could either be busy, could either have a lot going on, you never know. But there's always a reason behind it. So the reason why a child would want to be heard by an adult is because most of the time, they're at least heard at all. That they have ideas that they want to convey and that they want to be heard in some way and form. That's why they want to be heard in some capacity. Okay? Hydrate. I was also told by classmates that the first lesson's always scary, so it's the first step is always hard. And the second one got a little easier, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself in the next episode, so that's a sneak peek. And also what happened on that day on Monday, I was just taught the idea of you gotta be comfortable making a fool of yourself. I mean, I'm talking to myself in my room, in a corner, with a camera on, by myself. And I mentioned this before. I talk to myself all the time without a camera on. I convey thoughts. I have so many things. It's just, they're trapped in there and they want to escape. So why not make the use of it with a podcast on Twitch? I mean, come on. What else am I supposed to do? Well, there's several things, but I digress. So in other words, you just gotta get used to being yourself, even a fool of yourself. Because in Monday's class, we have to sing. And, well, if you ask somebody to sing, some people are very uncomfortable with that. And as teachers, we sometimes have to convey a tune or two. Because children like music at a young age. You sing, they like, they enjoy. I don't know why I went into that accent in the first place, but you get my point. Convey the thoughts, and it makes sense. Okay. I think we got. All right. Basically, is you gotta be comfortable singing, even if you're not professional at it. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you can convey a tune of sorts. Because you need to look happy enough to be normal. Like, you may not be comfortable. Excuse you. You may not be comfortable with singing, for those of you that are going to be teachers, but they're gonna want to hear a tune or two because it's like normal. Even though it's not normal for you, you have to like be comfortable with the unpredictability, the unknown. You just gotta be comfortable in your own skin. And also sort of learn how to act confident enough for them to not notice too much that you're not comfortable or anything. But children will find out. They do. They notice things. You may not think it, but they do. Anyway. I did a little bit more planning and homework. Tuesday wasn't really anything worth noting. Well, I did wrote notes, but I'm gonna skim over that. Alright. I'm gonna mention art class on Wednesday. Okay, so I don't remember for the life of me, but I do know I did learn something in art class while I was in the midst of drawing something, or I was taught some kind of interesting cultural knowledge. You know those like clapping games such as patty cake, patty cake, bakers, those kind of games, or like those games. Those were roots from Africa, and they're somewhere in like the middle of America, and maybe to the eastern side. Wait, no, definitely the eastern side, close to Florida, somewhere around the coastal side. Think Carolina. Do not quote me, but I do know it's close to Florida. That's as far as I can remember, because it was last week. I would have remembered if I actually streamed last Friday, but yeah, it gets exhausting after a while, okay? Not doing the podcast, just having a lot going on. But I did know that the tribe or culture that came from Africa was in America. They put some of their culture roots that into what we know today, such as the clapping games that we grow up with, that I mentioned. The music actually stemmed all the way from Africa. Don't believe me? See, this sounds familiar. I heard some of their music. I heard gospel. I heard blues, jazz, and it even inspired a little bit of hip hop. Like, the list can go on. It's like, blues may be the roots. But here's the question. What are the roots of blues? That is what I'm filling in the missing blank. It stems all the way from this culture. This African tribe. I'm guessing a tribe, if my memory is right. And that culture brought all those little things, or helped influence what we know today. Which also is great. So she played the music, she introduced us to this culture, and we were drawing from like a painting of someone. There was like a bit of like a small little part of it. So you have like this busy painting. You just pick one part you want to draw, and that's it. I found this tree, like in the top, if it's like right here on the screen, it'd be right here, somewhere. Okay? But yeah, it'd be right here. I am so getting used to having to do this backwards. But you get the gist. I put like a tiny like top left corner, and it works. I actually drew quite well. I was just doing the best I can, even though I'm like a hard critic on myself, but it looked really awesome, along with this collage of others, which is great. It was also Wednesday happened to be my busiest last week because after class I had to find a spot to sit down and just listen to a workshop. Why was I going to a workshop? Well, remember that bit about the C-Best and the C-Set venting I did? Well, turns out our glorious governor gave the teachers, myself, meaning me, a way to waive or bypass at least the C-Best. I'm not sure about the C-Set. I am not holding my breath. I am just hoping I can at least narrow down at least these 4 tests I have to take. If I can just bypass the C-Best, that will be fine. I can literally just plan from there. Just like 3. 3 is fine. 3 I can manage, but 4 it would be a lot of work, but I can manage that too. Still. Turned out to be a really short one. Didn't know how long it was going to be. And it really didn't give too many answers until this week. Might mention this later on for next episode, but simple version, I finally found the answer. Basically, I just sign up a waiver saying that I have all these classes that I've taken that should be able to count for all the stuff I'm supposed to be tested on anyway. So it's like, I have all these classes that can basically say I did all these things anyway. Which, by the way, I've taken a lot of classes, so at least one of those classes out of many, I should have gotten a needed grade. Most of them are like A's and B's anyway. Around that time, I was also getting like... I'll explain that more a bit, but there should be some kind of way. One of those classes has to count for something, and 3 of them I put for the needed. For the C-Best, there are 3 specific things they're looking for. Writing, reading, and math. Why? Well, they gotta test your knowledge on that. And the C-Set are probably like other subjects. The only thing that doesn't make sense is, I would hate this, but they should just combine them into one, so that way you don't have to take 2 separate tests, and you won't have to put so much out of your pocket. Yeah, by the way, you have to pay for these tests. They're not just giving them to you for free. So that's another thing you have to consider is money. Yeah, biggest, hardest thing to do, and it's nuts. It's nuts. Even the TPA costs money, like lots of mola. Like, I'm going to stress out. I'm not going to say how much because, quite frankly, I don't remember. I do remember being in the hundreds, though. Maybe between 100 to 200. Between 100 and 200, maybe 150. I don't know. Ridiculous amounts, okay? Ridiculous in my book. Just a lot. So, anyway, but I haven't found out a lot of the details. I was actually just a little confused. So, all I knew was that there was a possible chance to waive it, that there was a possible chance that my classes could count, but there was a lot of mixed information. It was not really well. Personally, the workshop wasn't well done in the first place. They didn't have all their information, which, enough for it to be simplistic, it it really was just a waste of time. But not a complete waste of time. I at least got my questions answered a bit. Like, is this even a thing? And it is. So now the question became, does this apply to me? That's where I'm going to probably go mention in detail next episode, which you could follow and keep track of when I do my next episode, which will hopefully be tomorrow. Hopefully. I am hoping on it. Anyway. Then we get to... Oh yeah. On Wednesday, after all that, I was home. I was drained. I was tired. It was just one of those long days. Just long days. Now we're on to Thursday. Thursday was a huge mix of emotions. Thursday was the day of teaching. It was my first lesson. I was a mixture of nervous, and of course in the beginning, I was trying to get everything settled at home, such as prepping for dinner for that night, which I didn't have a lot of. I could have done a lot of things, but I improvised and did the best I could. But drama festered. To be completely honest, I was just trying to make the use of the situation. I could have done a few things, but I just thought on my feet and went from there. My parents did not like that. Should I have asked? Maybe waited, maybe be patient? Yes, but did I wanted to do something right then, right there, so I at least do something, just so they have food at least prepped, done, and, well, there to work with? Yes. But it's neither here nor there. But yeah, that sort of drama festered. It did not make it easy. It was just so bad. I was trying to keep myself hyped, trying to keep myself in that whole teacher zone, like, you got this, you know what you're doing, you've rehearsed this a few times. And also the whole drama fester thing, it was like a nightmare. And I hated it. It's just like, why? Why do we live in this bubble where I have to, like, deal with this emotion of the drama that I have, and also wanting to deal with the excitement of teaching for the first time virtually. Yeah, that was a bit much. Okay. So, tutoring happened at 4 o'clock on a Thursday. What did I teach? Basically, poetry, exploring culture using poetry. So, bridging the idea of exploring other cultures and viewpoints, poetry, which arts isn't always introduced in a lot of things. It isn't always, like, contributed to a lot of subjects. So, don't be surprised if what I tell you may shock you. I'm supposed to have, like, 5 students at max. Like, at least maybe 1 or 2. Okay? I had 2 students. Need to pace myself. I had, like, 2 students. who were very engaged. They loved what I did, and it really made my day. What did I do? Okay? First thing I did was warm up to things. One, I wanted to know who they were, who my students were, who they are, what was their favorite color, because it was going to be important for an activity later. Through an object. Probably should have said what their favorite color was. But hey, we all learn. Especially me. And also, like, are you a sunshine or a rain cloud? Like, are you feeling good today or bad? But in a sort of fun way. And turned out it worked. It, one, helped ease my nerves. Two, actually made me feel a little bit more comfortable teaching what I know. I opened up with a discussion. Just a simple, what do you know about poetry? And I was working with only 2 kids, 2 students. Just 2. So I'm just like making the most out of the situation. Because when you're teaching, you're just rolling with the punches. It's kind of like performing. Actually, it is performing in a sense. You just gotta roll with it. You gotta adapt. It's pretty much improv acting, but way more than that. You're not up there talking all the time. Sometimes you just gotta collab, you gotta think outside the box. Maybe this one. So, yeah. What I did was simply introduce the topic by a discussion. Getting to understand where their thought processes are in this whole mess. In this whole lesson. Poetry some words, but I'm rolling with it. So after I got a general idea, I then went to introducing the topic. Introducing, like, the background, like, what is poetry, in a sense. So, a lot of the students have said poetry is just things that are short and with rhymes. I'm like, no. Like, yes, they rhyme. Yes, they can be short, but there can be so much more. Simple thing like that, I think got them engaged. Because I think it opened up their eyes a little bit, be like, wait, what? It isn't? And also, like, not every poem follows the simple punctuation rules of English. I like to think it pretty much does what it wants. Like, you read a poem, you basically do that. Here, let me give you an example. Which actually is something I will mention afterwards. Because it segues to what happened next. So, I didn't give this a title. I actually didn't do this alone. I was listening to a piece of music with my classmates, the person sitting next to me, and I had about 8 words. So we had about 16 words to work with. And these were the words that pretty much came up in the midst of listening to the music piece we were listening to. So, this is what we came up with for a poem, using those exact 16 words. Universal, unusual, multicultural, instruments, magical, beauty, beautiful strings. Breathtaking, blue, calming, harmonic. Majestic, dramatic, passionate, joyous, adventurous. Why did I mention that? Why did I read a poem that talks about... Why did I mention this at all? Because that very activity was what I used for the activity in the lesson. Yep, I literally just used the activity from the lesson. Used the activity from my class. It was so simple to do. All I can do is just pick a piece of music that didn't have any words, just didn't have any lyrics, singing, just simple music. And it was so easy. I could have picked any. I decided to pick. I decided to pick Dearly Beloved because that's what I love to do. It's what I love to play when I'm getting emotional or needing to hear said piece of music. I had my students hear it, the whole song, like, longest 4 minutes of my life, because I'm like, build up anxiety, build up like bunch of questions and thoughts. I'm like, one part of me is like anxiety, panicking emoji, whatever you want to look at it. That was one part of me, and the other part of me was like, trust the system, hold, breathe, you're fine. So I did. I waited it out, even though my two little people are like arguing amongst themselves in my head. Like anxiety inducing. Yes, very, very much so. After they heard the whole song, I asked them what came to mind. And now, when I'm listening to Dearly Beloved, I can't really put to words. I never could. I try, but there really wasn't any words I could really say, no matter how many times I've listened to it. I've tried over the years. But when I heard from, like, the viewpoint of my students, who are young, probably never heard of the game to begin with, never even heard this piece of music until I introduced it to them. They described it as sad. Let's see. Described it as sad, destroyed, dying, defeated, along with Black, Night, and the Moon. So the theme is sad, darkness, defeat, and night. All from like one piece of music. Which is great. And I was so taken back by it because I never saw it as that. I never heard it as that because I've played it so many times. It was nice to get a fresh perspective. It was so nice to hear from like fresh ears, if that makes sense. It was so good to hear them describe my favorite piece of music from a video game to me and making a poem, which made it simpler enough to do the actual lesson. Because after that, I introduced the 3 poems of like 3 different poets from 3 different cultures. Chinese, Hispanic, and African American. It really wasn't like random. I specifically chose these. 2 of them were actually 3 of these poets were all introduced from like my creative writing class, because she wanted us, my class at that time, to be introduced to poets from other cultures as well. So I was merely passing down the same idea into my lesson, which was so simplistic it was actually simple. I was just a nervous ball of yarn at the time. But as the lesson went through, it felt very simple, even though I was just trying to pace myself. I need to get some water. Hydrate. They described the lesson to me, like, we did an activity. The last activity we did after I read all the poems, we talked. I had them try poetry. Just simple 4 lines. I wasn't expecting anything more. They wanted to go further, they could. I didn't even suggest reading them to me, because if it was personal, they could keep it to themselves if they wanted. I wasn't gonna push it. But they wanted to read to me, so I let them. I was giving subtle choices that they wanted to do, which I never thought about at the time, but I just rolled with it. I think that simple concept of allowing them to choose was important. It's like all those things I was taught the whole entire time from AA, bachelor's, even now, everything makes sense. It's just when you're studying at the time, it does not click until you actually do it yourself. That literally is as simple as that. They did the poems, they were great. I wish I could have kept samples of one of them. They didn't put it in the chat, but you know, I wanted them to be comfortable. So I don't think I asked at the time. I was just trying to get through the lesson on my first time. Virtually, that is, virtually. Let me make that abundantly clear. I have taught in person before. It is very different than virtual, and I was also a little out of practice talking to people because there's something called the pandemic. So I explained the activity. I went very well. They loved it. They loved it. Everything they said they liked about the lesson. It was every point I was actually trying to give. And I'm like, this sounds very much rarity. Either I did it so well and passionately, or I got lucky. Well, to be fair, it's with 2 students, so of course it's gonna nail down easier. But I'm hoping one day I get to try this with a lot of other students. Probably somewhere further down the line of student teaching when I'm a bit more confident and a little bit more comfortable in my own skin. Yeah. But for a first lesson on my own, planning and just getting there in general, it was actually really good. It was, after that, I was like in cloud 9. Afterwards, I was just like, did that just happen? Did I just literally sat down on my butt and actually taught for the first time? Like, virtually? Sort of like this disbelief. But when it actually hit, I'm like, yeah, I did it. I think that same day I also called my grandmother, and she was so happy for me. Which is so great. I haven't really spoken to my grandmother in a long while. Because I've been so busy, but it was nice to talk to her again. It was really, really nice. Anyway, where day we at? We're at Friday. Friday I was home most of the time, and I was working on my I Am poem. I think this is what happened. Thursday night, I watercolored the background before I actually went before the morning. I woke up early enough to do it before I had to post it, turn it in online, you get the gist. I have a picture of it, but this is what it looks like. Before. Yeah, that's what it looks like. So it goes, I am passionate about teaching. I am energetic. I am a poet and a storyteller. I am a lover for music. I am a true-born gamer. I am deep yet inspiring. I am caring. I am willing to make lasting memories. I am always loving creative ideas and activities. I am fun and funny. I am a dreamer. I'm always willing to hang out with friends when I have the time. When I have the time, that is the key. There's only so many hours in a day. Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, the watercolor kit I got. They're all like primaries. So the red, blue, yellow. You have to like, and maybe a weird colored uh purple and navy blue and black. I think some whites. Don't quote me on that. So it's like you gotta create the colors yourself. I'm like, okay. Honestly, I love art class. I really do. It was so much fun, so relaxing. It was like the one point of the entire week I was always enjoying the most. Sadly, though, it ended this week. I'm talking about last week. It's sad and very frustrating. Because even my art professor was very passionate in saying that art classes usually get short. Why? Because, well, people have to sort their priorities. What is more priority? People sadly push art aside because they don't think that's priority. Yeah, they think creativity is not important. I can think of several different reasons why that is not the case. But I'm not salty about that at all. Moving on. But yeah, um I worked on the background Thursday night, worked on the rest of it with nothing more than Sharpies. Yeah, basically just Sharpies that I had. Because they pop out more. Especially the metallics. The metallic colors seem to, like, stick out more. Because that's how metallics work. They like to make things stick out, and I just work with the colors I have, because that's how it works. I was able to look through my lesson plan that I did for, well, my lesson on Thursday that I was talking about earlier. And I think there were like a few things he mentioned, but most of it was really looking good, which, as for first attempt, was great. I was just mainly getting details out on paper. And I have a mother who is super detail oriented, so yeah, that's gonna come naturally to me because my mother's voice comes in my head sometimes saying, "You need more detail, cat. There's not enough." You ever have your mother in your head, and then you're just like looking at that space in your head, you're just like, "Go away." Do you ever just like tell that mother voice in your head to just like shut up? Sometimes it happens to me when I'm like trying to think, and she's like right there. I'm like, "Do you mind? I'm trying to do something here." Yeah, um, the afternoon class, I was, I was dragging, honestly. I was sleepy. I was having a light lunch. Note to self: get a heavy pack, or make sure to make a sandwich with a lot of protein or something filling so you at least not fall asleep. Luckily, I do this thing where I keep my camera off if I know I'm gonna fall asleep. I mean, it's not like he's gonna force me to have my camera on all the time. I would still do it anyway, but I'd try my best to stay awake. It's just not easy. Especially when it's a topic like English learning, like for English learners, and it's just really not easy to stay awake when the material is not easy to grasp. Or at least for me, it's just it meshes with everything else. And it's the last class I have before the weekend, and it usually just dries up so much because I'm over it. I'm just not into it. This week, though, I was actually focused for once. Not sure how that happened. Must be the change in the season. Who knows? Yeah, and then, well, last Friday was my mother's birthday. And, well, I already mentioned in the beginning of the episode how Oak Glen went, so let's just leave that into the past and move on. Okay. Now, about 45 minutes in, I'm gonna mention the next part of my educational story. Basically, my life story, to be honest. They're like maybe bits and pieces you haven't heard a lot about, but honestly, if there's more, I'll probably tell later when I can or want. But I do know that I have some topics in mind for when we do get off of the topic of me. Because I thought about them today in class. It just came to me. And I like to write them down while they're hot. I still listen. I'm a good student. I try to listen. It's just, I have to keep something. I have to do something while I'm listening because it just makes me feel like I'm doing something while I'm paying attention. It's just how my brain works, so. Okay. So, I'm splitting the college life into two parts. One is community college, which is what I'm going to mention in this episode. The second is my bachelor's journey, which will be next episode, which will be aired tomorrow. It will probably be tomorrow night and most likely be published, if not like uploaded, by Sunday, if not Monday. So yeah, most likely both of these episodes will be on my channel under the playlist of teacher's notes by Monday. You'll see them on Monday. That I will make very, very big certain of. Excuse me. Alright. So, part 1 of my college life is community college. Now, haven't really heard about what happened the last time in the last episode. Here's a recap. I got into community college because the community college offered a class, an orientations class, which would give 1 unit to the college. I thought if I got into that college, I could be easily able to transfer to Cal State Fullerton. It was a big shot, but it worked, obviously. It was a big brain play at the time, before even the term big brain was even a thing. This was all the way back in 2012, mind you. I took that class. I did really well. I got that unit. It got me right into the college. It segued me in. It was great. I didn't have to take the SAT or the ACT or all those tests that say, oh yeah, here's the score. Here's all the colleges you could go to. Yeah, no, I just wanted to get to Cal State Fullerton. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna keep it a buck. I just wanted to get to the college. Because it was my dream college. Which I will probably talk about right now. I wanted to get to that college because I've heard so many things about it. I didn't know it had a good teaching program until a lot of teachers mentioned it. I just knew that it was the school I wanted to go to. I just knew that it was a good place for teachers. I didn't know their teaching program was actually really good. Probably should have given that. Probably should put them two and two together, but I'm a high school student. But I'm 17. What do you expect? Yes, I was on the honor roll like 5 times, but I'm not perfect, okay? I'm a human being. I'm not gonna make smart decisions all the time. I'm young. Anyway, so I managed to get all the steps. I managed to send him for a scholarship for the same college, or managed to win said scholarship and get to the college. So yeah, life was looking pretty good back then. Oh boy. So yeah, so with that and the DOR, everything is set. The DOR stands for Department of Rehabilitation. So if you're mentioning me saying DOR, that's why. So the Department of Rehabilitation said, hey, we can sponsor you and help you get through your schooling and stuff so you can eventually work. Why does this department exist? Long story short, it's basically to help with the law of helping those with special needs segue into life. So they're having trouble finding jobs or work. They're there for something. They help with services that they need for adults. So that's what they do. And they were looking around in high schools, and well, long story short, managed to earn that sponsorship, or like they said, yeah, we'll work with you, kind of thing. So that's how the encounter went. So the plan was pretty simple. Since my scores did not match up with what I wanted to do, there was this plan they had. And as long as I followed it, everything would be fine. So I followed their plan. Instead of being a high school teacher like I wanted, I was put under preschool for some reason. Didn't like the idea at the time, but turned out I actually liked the idea. I usually flip-flop almost every time, but I'm really sticking with elementary. I really think that's a good spot for me because that's a little bit of I can deal with any of the age ranges around that time, so that's a good spot for me at least. So everything was fine. Everything went well as far as I can remember. Then my caseworker I was working with retired. So what did that mean? Switching up who worked with me. Now this ended up getting sketchy, so after this, everything just went really off the rails fast. So I got switched up with someone else, but it was still the same. Communication got a little sketchy. Fast forward to graduation. This is the DOR portion of the story. I'll mention what happened in between all those times in a bit. But around the time of graduating, 2017, the person that I was working with told me I could go for my bachelor's. And at that time, I'm thinking, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I could either go to work, like the plan says, or I could get my bachelor's. Didn't take me more than a minute to hop onto the idea of getting my bachelor's, because I knew for a fact that I needed to get my bachelor's. Because that's exactly what I needed to do. Yeah, it's just that was a whole thing that I will mention next episode, because that choice came back to haunt me, but it was a choice, it was a risk I was willing to take. I didn't know it was a risk at the time. I was just taking the opportunity while it was there, and I wasn't gonna question it. which led to me transferring. And because I was transferring, I was in the midst of transferring from Fullerton College to Cal State Fullerton. It was like right there. I literally could get my bachelor's in Cal State Fullerton. It was the perfect time to go. So I did. I went through all the transfer stuff the rest of that year. And everything was being finalized with one tiny little detail around Veterans Day weekend. Sadly, though, tragedy struck that weekend. It really does. As I was figuring out how the transfer thing was working out, my grandfather passed away November 10th on Veterans Day. Yeah, fun. I have a poem about it, but essentially what happened was my mom got a call from the hospital that where her work was. It literally was just across the street. But she got the call from the doctors. They were trying to save his life. And it came hard for mom because she had to make a tough decision. She could either let them save him or let him go. And mother let him go. A choice no one should have to make. No one. At all. I'm not really kidding. So as this was happening, her coworker let her go to go to her father who was passing away. And my dad was on his way there. It was happening all at once, and where was I in the midst of all of it? At home. Getting the information either over the phone or through text, and I'm not sure which is worse. This is like the second time this has happened. I was somewhere else and I get a text message saying someone else of my family died. I felt very guilty that I didn't get off my butt, go on the bus, and head to the hospital. But at the same time, it's like, what could you have done? Why did you want to go to the hospital? All you would see is your grandfather gone. And I think that's what I wanted the most, is to be there. To really feel like he's gone. And you think because I was in that state of denial, I wanted to remember the good times of my grandfather. I wanted to remember the happy times that he provided. Because that's what Dia de los Muertos is. You pass on the stories of those that are gone to the younger generation. And I like that idea much better than mourning for the dead. Though I still mourn for the dead, it's just I'd rather share the stories and pass them down to keep the memory alive. So that's the only way I feel part of him still lives. It's how I cope. It's what I might do on around Dia de los Muertos. Depending on if I ever stream that day. That might be an interesting time. Okay, but that's further down the line, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. But yeah, long and short end of it. I was dealing with the transfer, and I was coping with the idea that my grandfather was gone. It was a mess. A really big mess in my family. Like, It was ridiculous. Afterwards, after the weekend end, the detail was fixed, everything was fine. So I officially was a Cal State Fullerton student. And I was happy. But I felt almost guilty because my grandfather passed away. Shouldn't I be sad? And all those confusing thoughts, it was just a mess. The best way I cope with that now is anytime I go to the beach, I talk to my grandfather because his ashes are buried in the sea. Just like he wanted. He did not want to have a funeral, so we didn't arrange one because that's what he wished. At least that's what Mom told me. I would have wanted to still do one because it would be a good way for me to let go. Yeah, I might unpack a lot of this later, but yeah, a lot of that was happening around the time I was in college. So, let's go back to the in-between parts of what was really going on in community college. One of the things that happened was my ex-friend and my friend and my parents' friend, so a family friend, really. Her name is Trish. Now, Trish was living around that time. It was before my ex-friend came in. It wasn't really the best situation. It made things a little bit tense around the house, and it was just really bad. My dad only accepted it because he was a man of honor, and he was trying to help her out of a bad situation, so he was just being kind. Ugh, didn't make it any easier living with her, though. I'm just stating the truth. It was just a little difficult at the time, and it was just a whole big mess, and my grandfather was still alive around that time, so this is a bit of context. That around the time of graduation was the year that my grandfather died, so I haven't graduated around this time yet. I was actually starting, so let's keep this in mind. She did not make it easy living with her, and it got worse when my ex-friend decided to live with us. They would bicker with each other like cats and dogs. It would be so bad. The arguments they would get into, and some of the time, I'd be so pissed. There was a point where Trish, 2 times. One time, Trish mentioned something to my mother. My mother was like, she did something to test to see how much she cared about my mother, and from my point of view, it looked like she didn't. So, out of impulse, anger, and emotions, I stood up to her. I was a little bit scared, but the adrenaline was getting in, and I was just like telling her off, saying, "You're not a good friend to my mother," and pulling a list of all the things that she could do better. She could just sit down and have a conversation, and I'm between 18 and early 20s around this time. So yeah, one of my better, finer moments, but hey, we learn. Did not make things easier, and dealing with my ex-friend at the time. she made things a little bit harder later on in life. such as there was this incident where I thought she was gonna cross the street, a busy street where cars would have hit her, and I would have seen possibly her being hurt. Now, of course, my brain is going to react and say, yeah, no, let's not do that, so I pull her back, which ended up causing something to break, which was her, like, $5 pens. Yeah, mind you, they're just $5 pens that you can get at a store. But she made a big deal out of them. Enough to where she was saying she would sue, and I knew there was an empty threat. My parents took it seriously. It just made it where it was bad. Later on, there was a situation that made it worse, and essentially, I still choose to not talk to her. As in, I've moved on. I don't know if I want to talk to her again. And that's up to completely me. Okay, that's my personal issue. Something I'm choosing to move on from. We had great memories and great times in high school, but I've changed. I'm not the same person at all. But in the midst of all that, Trish made a ultimatum with my parents. Her or my ex-friend. At the time, my parents needed the money, so they picked Trish. But my mother helped my ex-friend get to a safe place. Which I hated Trish for. I hated that came up. I hated that was a choice. That anger built up inside of me. And I did not like her for the rest of the time. I wanted to stay as far away from her as possible. It was the first time I ever felt like I held a grudge or something so long enough that I didn't know I would never forgive her for that. Now, it was years ago, and I'm just choosing to move on from it. Move on from both of them, honestly. I moved on from her. I moved on from both of these people. So, that situation no longer angers me. At the time, it literally pissed me off that it happened, and I was still doing school, so that whole balance thing was not really easy to do. So that left with a friend who barely... So yeah, that led to where the communications were getting very hard to grasp. So I barely heard from her. I left a bit of a void in my life. And somewhere in the midst, I was just dealing with schoolwork, but also kind of in a bad place. I'm going to go into specifics, but I was in a really, really dark place in my mind. And I wanted out. I wanted out of that dark place. So, a lot of things came up in my brain. Not so good things. Some things that were a terrible idea. An extremely bad idea. Couldn't do it. All that was there was thoughts. So, what was left to do? In my case, left up to faith. I'm a religious person, so I believe in God, but I'm a more open-minded person, so I like to think I keep my ears open to other people, and I'm more open-minded. I have to be for my profession anyway, so I try to keep an open mind and not to judge so much, but just want to listen. It's one of my better qualities. But I left it up to God and I prayed. I told him, look, I don't know what to do with my life, personally. I know what to do with my life, professionally, but not personally. If you have a better idea, please guide me there. Please. But in the meantime, I'm just gonna focus on my career. So I did. I just focused on schoolwork, kept my whole base into it. Just focused on that and nothing else. Till one day. I'm only gonna mention this briefly. Saving it for another day. Tori actually just came into the chat and said hi. That's who I was kind of interacting with. Tori and I had known each other for 6 years. It was 6 years ago that we met around this time. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to keep that little thing, that little story later. But I will tell you this much. It was because of Alex, my friend from junior high. He came to visit, and through that interaction is when I met Tori. And how all the adventures and still going on today. I still can't believe it's been 6 years that we've known each other. My word. So much has happened since then, but essentially, she was the friend I definitely needed in my life. And I'm very grateful. But yeah, like I said, I am saving this bad boy for later. So, I will mention it one day. Probably will talk to Tori about it, but if you want to know the story, I'd recommend going to Astrology, and looking up the checking when they're live and asking the question, hey, do you know Wakanda Forever 10? Talk about that story. Something like that. You can literally just type cat. She literally knows me by that name. By that nickname. I went on a trip to LA. Like, some parts of LA. There's this place in LA where there's a lot of Victorian-style houses. The house for Thriller is in this very neighborhood. I got to see it. I was actually so surprised it was still there. Well, it's probably because it was culture and also related to something of history, even of like pop culture standpoint, so yeah, makes sense. Anyway. So yeah, went on a trip to LA. It was because of a class. And on this with the same professor that I took with another class, which was a history of Native Americans. Because of that class, I was able to go to Arizona. It was for spring break, and I had a choice to make. Do I go to Arizona on my spring break, or stay at home and work on homework? So I lived that choice with Trish. Yes, the very same roommate that I said was not the greatest, but, you know, there were some good moments. She actually gave some sound advice. She, like, told me and my mother. My mother and her were saying the same thing. Go! You're young, go live life, please. And I was hesitant because I was very, very concerned about financial reasons, so I was just worried that might be a thing. But I still went. I still did I possibly can to balance my finances and just go on that trip. It was the best piece of advice and encouragement I've ever had in my life. It was so good. I have pictures still of that event. I still remember it. It was great. I don't know what it is. Actually. Never mind. Okay. Sorry. Back to the thing. Yeah, I still took pictures. The Grand Canyon is way better in person. Pictures do not do it justice at all. I learned so much from that trip, and the best part of it was I was going to have to do this presentation thing that would have been pretty much what the trip was all about. Like, all the places we went to were covering exactly what some of the presentations were about anyway. So, because I went on the trip for my spring break, I was getting an A for that project without actually doing it because I decided to go on the trip. That was the best news I've heard in my life. I was so happy. It literally just made me smile. I'm not even joking, I was like so happy I heard that. Thank you. It was one less thing for me to do. So I'm just sitting there listening to everybody else's presentations while I'm just sitting there with my other classmates who came with me to the Arizona trip, and we're just all hearing everybody else's presentations. That professor, I believe, has retired. I hope he's doing well, and I still enjoyed his classes. They were so great. He was a great professor. Honestly, I would have taken almost every class I've had with him. Not even gonna lie. He was so enjoyable. This thing's someone I could literally look up to. There were about 2 events. One I was a part of was called Kinder Caminata. I went to this event. I helped on this event twice. Essentially, it was the idea of pulling kindergarten classrooms from different districts onto campus and just introduce all the different majors in a more fun way. Sort of like a little fair, if you will. And it was so fun for me to do. It was fun for the kids. It was a great time. They would do this event, I believe, every spring. And it was a good time, too. Sadly, though, I don't know if they done it during the pandemic. I graduated way before. I graduated 3 years before that. But yeah, Kinder Caminata was fun to help out. It was fun to do, and I got to at least help out in some way, form, in that regard. I think I helped by guiding a class to specific parts, and I don't think I was alone. I was always partnered up with someone, which was great because I always felt like I didn't know what I was doing sometimes. I'm just like, hey, you know what we're doing? Okay, good. I'll just follow your lead. I was such a different person back then. It's not even funny. The person I was before I met Victoria, I was a people pleaser. Like, badly. I was less confident, always doubting myself, always having anxiety in some way, like overthinking, always having this feeling like I had to be living up to everybody's expectations. And I could, at the time, not lived up to everybody's expectations. So yeah, that did not help out. The other event was the high school theater festival. I think for the sake of time, I'll probably just mention that it was just a high school festival, like a festival for all the high school theater groups. I don't know if it was from the whole Southern California or if it's just Orange County. But I'm going to say for the argument it might have been Orange County, because that would make the most sense. All the theater departments were in one place. So yeah, I got to see my high school, I got to see Sunny Hills. Ooh, probably should have mentioned that. Sorry. Yeah, I got to mention a lot of the schools. Oh, if not all of the schools. Okay. Yeah. But you know, with high school comes high school students, comes stupidity. There's one I was volunteering for the event because I was taking theater at the time. And I thought, yeah, why not? I could use some volunteer hours. I could use something on my resume. So I did. I did that. I dealt with a situation on the day of the event. There were like two students that were piggybacking one another. Now, these are high school kids. These are high school students. Somebody's gonna do something stupid. Somebody's gonna do something ridiculous. It's bound to happen. We were kind of informed that, yeah, ridiculous things have happened. Crazy things have happened. Even, like, calling the hospital or calling the ambulance happened. Like, oh, jeez. Yep, it happened. I was actually nearby. I saw these two students carrying, and the next thing I know, they fell backwards. I think the person on top was okay, but the person that was carrying the student wasn't. I don't know anything about. No, not. This is what I little know about science and health, okay? I know if you fall backwards, it does not do good on the spine. Now, there is a trick to preventing that. I'm not sure how you do it when you're carrying another person, but if you're falling backwards, I mentioned this in, like, last episode, but I'm mentioning this again because this is important to know. If you're falling backwards, quickly look sideways and, like, land, like, and make sure your hands are going this way, and your hands are spread out, and that your arms are the ones that impact first before the spine. And you're looking somewhere else to protect the neck and possibly your head. How the hell are you supposed to do that when you're carrying a person? No idea. Probably could have turned, maybe. Not sure, but yeah, this person was probably hurt from the back and wasn't doing too hot. Because if the person was carrying another person, that person's weight is what they're carrying, which means gravity push if they're pushed back because gravity is affecting the fall. That means one that the person on the bottom is likely going to get hurt the most because of the weight that's also being a factor into all this. Now enough about science. Let's get back to the point. The point being that these kids, one of them came to me for help. Now, I remembered in the procedure, I would have called 911 immediately. That would be my first instinct. But I remembered the procedure that they should probably go to someone higher because they have more resources than I do. Because I'm just a person looking around, making sure everything was okay, they need help, I'm not doing something stupid. Okay, maybe that wasn't exactly my job. I was just to keep an eye on things, most. So all I had to do so my job was simple. I told this kid to go to the person with the blue shirt, because I was with the red shirt. The blue shirts were the higher-ups, so like the manager. Okay, if I was just a coworker, I was just an employee, I told him to go to my manager. That's the setup, okay? So, he did. I think it was he. For the sake of, like, memory, I do remember being a guy, so I'm gonna go by that. He went to blue shirt. The blue shirt made the call they took this person to the hospital, or to an ambulance, and that was the end of that. So I basically took care of the situation and remained calm and tried to remember what I was told to do in these situations. I usually try to tell the story in interviews. Not really sure how far they go, so. Another thing that happened around the time of student teaching, or no, in senior year, when I was graduating, or the term I was graduating, was one, I was student teaching, taking boxing. Two, was that around that time, the Child Development Club was coming out of 20-year hiatus, which means we were starting from ground zero. So, not completely ground zero, things were still laid there, formatted, done. We just literally were starting from scratch of a new club, needing to know what to do and who was going to lead it, who was going to all the leadership roles. So, I bravely, now this is around the time me and Tori are friends, I was inspired by my new friend. I'll say day, I was getting confidence. However small, I decided to volunteer. Because no one else was stepping up at the time. So I decided to go for vice president. Now, another person went for vice president as well, but that person then decided to go president. So essentially, she took up the president role and I took the vice president and basically became a helping role around the club and did my very best to balance everything as best as I could. The nice thing was is that we were all new to the rules. We were all new to the club was so new, but at the time, I had no clue I was going to even. I wasn't really thinking about transferring to Cal State Fullerton until I was given the offer to get my bachelor's there. So that's where the DOR offer fits into all of this. Is that I literally was just going with a plan until things switched. It happens a lot. It happens in life. So student teaching. Basically, I was practicing being a preschool teacher at a laboratory school. I already mentioned what a laboratory school is, but it's just basically a college version of a preschool. Only it functions for two reasons. It is an actual preschool, meaning actual students live there, and it gives purpose for sort of taking care of the students while the other takes care of the children while the adults, parents, are learning. So, it gives balance there. While it also functions as a useful place for college students to practice their craft of teaching. So, it helps there too. You can probably look it up on the internet. The internet can provide you that, so look it up. But yeah, I was student teaching. I was learning how the idea of being a preschool teacher works. And I was taking boxing at the time because I wanted something to relieve the stress of the last year. Because the last term, I needed a stress reliever. I needed something to help around those confusing times. Turned out to be the best idea ever. Because one, I was dealing with really bad days and I could just lay it out in boxing. And I would do those at night. The first night, oh my gosh, I remember it so well. I must have laid it all out for some reason. I was so out of practice. I was sore. I could barely move for a week. I slowly got back my body, but Oh my gosh, it was like my body was cursing me out for a whole week. Good times. I still have those boxing gloves from back then, too. Oh, those were different days. Those were different times, let me tell you. Yeah, so I'd balance out doing the whole student teaching preschool thing and just boxing at night. Just getting it all out. I guess I should say I have some experience doing that too, but it's not like I was up front in teaching. I was more like helping out as best as I could. And maybe doing some form of teaching, but it never felt like I was really the teacher. Like I was an equal footing. It always felt like two of them were doing this student teaching while I was just in the background. Yeah, the meetings. I remember those white men. Another story for another day. Really, getting on an hour and a half here, so. What I will tell you is my major. It's just child development. It's getting for a child development AA degree. I learned a lot about observing. And I became really good at observing from afar. Not so much being a part of the lesson. But it's not like the kids didn't notice me in the background. I mean, they're kids. They're gonna notice. They're basically used to people watching them all the time. But when they do notice me, sometimes they're like waving hi or drawing something. I'm just like rolling with the punches because that's what you learn. You just learn to roll with it. You just learn to just go with the flow. At least that's what I learned right away. Like, just go with it. I didn't realize how there are different types of ways to record notes. There were different ways to observe. It was just a whole thing. I learned something called the Reggio approach. I already explained in maybe another episode, but you can look it up. It's based off of Reggio, Italy. I guess Reggio, Italy values art, so they recycle materials, which honestly is good for the planet, so that's a good thing. But you're using recycled materials to help teach. So you can use recycled materials to help construct something. To help, like, maybe make a map. Or maybe make buildings. Maybe make racetracks. There's literally so much if you just use your creativity about it. Because if you're doing preschool, there's literally so much you can teach in a short period of time. But how you do that is up to you as the teacher. Okay? So there's a room for all the construction stuff. And in that room there's also like the music props. But in another room, there's like a Italian word for this, but it essentially means studio. It's basically an art studio where all the art stuff is, and there's a room where you could just read stuff, like books to them, and everything. And then you get to the actual classroom, and there's little stations you can do. One is even light, where you can explore light using a overhead projector. For those of you that don't even know what that is, look it up. It was just something I remember from the past, and I am more surprised that it's now obsolete. Which almost is sad. Because I remember how that was like a lot of my life. Different times. Days. But yeah. We're at the hour and 34-minute mark. And I'm getting a bit on the sleepies. So basically, That was what happened. So that was my college life. I'll probably mention more details if I can remember it tomorrow. If not, don't worry about it. I'll try to upload this as best as I can, but it's gonna hold my breath. I'm like tired, so we'll see what happens. But I'm gonna do my best. Either way, I'm gonna call it. That's about it for the community college part of my life. The rest of my time from the college I'm in now, which is Cal State Fullerton, will be mentioned in next episode tomorrow and what happened this week. So I'll mention what happened this week tomorrow night, most likely, depending on how things go, which is usually how things have been. So tomorrow night, I'll be talking about it. You'll probably get this sometime between Sunday, Monday, and anytime after that. So to segue into goodbye, I'm gonna read a fortune. I liked this one because it makes sense. Stay calm through chaos. That sounds like the theme of the whole entire pandemic, to be honest. Stay calm through the storm. Well, that's gonna be it for this episode. If you like what you've heard, then leave a like. You know what to do with that big red button. It's YouTube. That's where this is going to go. You press that button. If you're on Twitch, you like it. You like me. If you want more of this, hit that follow button. Could do that. Could. It's right there. I recommend it. Anyway. Right. I'm going to end things here. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode, everybody. Bye.